Grassello Di Calce Spatulata. This video will be showing you a high gloss, extremely high gloss application on this beautiful ceiling here that you see in North Van overlooking the water. And then there's a custom curved stairwell and staircase with the Grassello on there as well. And that will be in a nice creamy tan color. The ceiling is in a kind of blue-green color that's matched the color of the water. The staircase is designed to be a two-coat system and to show a lot of beautiful movement and color modeling, but not have the shine. So it's going to have poly seal and then a matte eco sealer over top of it, very ultra matte sealer, and that will contrast the shine that you're going to have on the other ceiling. So the same product is used in two areas in one space. One's completely matte, one's extremely shiny, but they both have a similar look in terms of the modeling. We're just showing here all of the externals are actually bullnose, and that's going to produce more of a curved look throughout that's uniform and works with the top curve of that staircase as well. The only issue is that the bullnose returns to a ceiling there, so you're seeing that we had to actually hand kind of form a finished line there with the tape, where the bullnose just wraps over. Again, we're priming everything with our quartz primer. Because the Grassello Di Calce Spatulata is so thin, you do want to go through and check all of your walls for little nicks, dings, dents, anything like that. Do a little pre-paint, take some putty, fix all those little areas up first, and then apply the quartz primer. Another trick for the quartz primer I find for this product is actually to dilute the product down 30 to 50% so it's thinner, and also try using a 6 or 10 mil roller. I wouldn't recommend even using a microfiber sleeve. I would use more of like a lint-free sleeve, because you want the least amount of texture with that, as it's a very thin product. You can't cover too much texture, and you don't want it to have too much marble kind of raised up. So that's a little trick. You can do a couple coats of that watered down. Try a 6 or a 10 mil and see. Also, depending on the application and what you're doing, you might want to change. And in certain circumstances, you could even use the quartz primer regularly as well. It just depends what kind of look and finish you're going for. Always make custom samples for your designers or your clients, and try each thing, even with a different type of primer, diluted, non-diluted, and see what effect you achieve. In this particular video, you're going to see a different trowel that I don't think you've seen yet in our videos. These are a very large Bianca trowel, however it's a flexible trowel, so it's similar to the flexible base coat trowel that we love and use all the time. However, that trowel is not going to protect you from dark marks, and it's also just not of the same type of quality that we're looking for this application. Also, the size and flexibility of this particular trowel lays the spatulata down very nice and uniformly, and really reduces your issue of having any lines. And just choosing the right trowel for a project like this could, extend the project even 3 or 4 days extra if you don't have the right trowel. I'd say just wrestling with trying to apply it without lines and without ridges. So all of the area here has been primed with that quartz primer, and now we're starting to apply the first coat of the Grassello Spatulata. The Spatulata is our shiniest product offered on the shop currently. I spent quite a bit of time working and developing this particular product. I also sourced a marble powder that is about 2 to 3 microns in diameter. The thinner the marble powder and the whiter and more bright that marble powder is, the better shine that you can get from your product. The Spatulata and the entire Grassello series is also manufactured with a different type of lime. It's not a dolomitic lime. It is a pure Cl90 calcium-rich lime. Again, very white, much finer and much more pure, and it doesn't leave any streaks in your particular finish. Some of the other dolomitic limes you'll find will kind of create cuts and little issues in your spatulatas because the grain size is actually a little too large for what we're looking for. So we've sourced the finest and purest calcium lime as well as the finest and purest marble powder to produce this very luxurious shiny finish. The application of this product is relatively easy. However, you do have to get the technique correct in terms of the thickness of it for the first coat, and then the subsequent layers, all as you can see, will gently dry into the product, and you're just putting them on in little half-moon shapes. You're not trying to do too much surface area at once, and it immediately dries into the product, so you're not putting on more than it can take, and you're also scraping any excess off and watching for the pattern that your hand is creating at the same time. You'll see here we're using the Pavon Anima trowel, another extremely advanced trowel that's just kind of come onto the market, similar to Come's Bianca trowel. When I first started plastering and doing Venetian plaster about 15 years ago, we didn't have access to these types of tools and technology. The Anima trowel is like plastering with a bit of air between you and the Grassello. It's almost like playing air hockey if you're using that trowel. And the reason that it's so good is that not only is the finish of the trowel extremely smooth, it doesn't drag at all on your plaster, and it also is even better than the Bianca trowel in my opinion in terms of not leaving dark marks, although the trowel itself is pitch black. Here you can see the specific technique we're using. This is the second coat of spatulata being applied to the ceiling. It's already shining quite a bit just from the second coat, and that's essentially the finish that we produced in a different color on the stairwell with a very similar technique. You can see in the face how you have quite a bit of those lights and darks. We have designers sometimes ask us, how do you create the different colors? And as you can see, the product itself is simply one color, but when you apply it, because the marble powder is so fine and thin, you're getting these minute variances in absorption, and also you're overlapping in different areas where one might have 3 coats and one might have 4 or 5 layers. And so with all that combined and a little bit of pressure as you polish the product, many different colors from white to light blues to very dark blues and everything in between will all form as all those layers start to come together. An important step here for the stairwell, because there's a lot of curves, there's a lot of unevenness even in the original drywall work, we're going through with a extra fine sanding sponge, and we do this with a lot of our finishes, just tidying up any little edges, little lines that might be left, any little discrepancies in the finish that might show up. We'll go through and tidy all those up. You want to sand very, very gently, else you will sand through the finish. It is extremely durable, but it is thin, and if you're taking a sandpaper to it for too long, you will start to see the quartz primer. So a very gentle touch is required, and then as you can see, another good tip is don't leave all that dust on there, as well as that can act as a bond breaker. So take a rag, nice microfiber rag or a nice white rag, and actually dust all those walls down by hand. Again, we've got a nice joint there to the floor, so as always we're using our finger and we're actually working that plaster deep into that crevice and making sure that it looks very nice. If you just use your putty knife to these edges, you'll find lots of ridges and buildup. You always want to make sure that you're continuing to make those little areas look very nice and professional. We always switch away from the 6 inches. You'll see us sometimes on base coats using a regular 6 inch. It's also a flexible 6 inch, not a stiff one. And once we switch to these final coats, we always start to use the Pavon spatulas that we sell in our shop. So here's a little bit of behind the scenes technique of how the stairwell was produced. Each person, especially with the spatulata product, will have their own look, will have their own hand movements, and you will see each person's particular movements. So you want to have people switch around if there's different people on the project and work on different areas so that you continue to have a uniform kind of pattern throughout. The top of that staircase is a handmade, as you can see, large bullnose. So we had to use plastic originally for the base coat to smooth it down, as you saw. And then for the top coat, we're just using the trowel or a putty knife and very slowly applying it over that edge, and then using plastic bags to polish it, and also a little bit of the anima trowel as well. You have to work with these different surfaces and really kind of slowly see what works best in the circumstance. There's no best process for doing curved and unusual surfaces like that. The stairwell here, although it's curved, it's not a super tight curve, and it's still quite easy to work and still similar to any normal wall. The only difficulty here is access, and then having someone kind of working from the top and connecting the rounded top part to the people working below. So we had 3 people working on this to make it look quite seamless. Although the spatulata doesn't have any aggregate in it, with only 2 coats you can potentially get some joint lines showing. So you still want to be mindful of where you're stopping and starting with that particular product. Although it doesn't really matter in the end because it doesn't have any aggregate, so it doesn't create large gaps or joints as you go over dry areas. But to maintain the most professional look, we still had 3 people on that and made sure that we kept kind of a wet edge as much as we could. Now here we're starting the ceiling. The ceiling here receives 3 coats in order to get the shine that you'll see at the end of the video. And in Australia, when I used to work there, sometimes you can do 6, 7, 8 coats, multiple colors. It's the type of product that you can do almost anything with it, and the more energy and effort you put in, the more beautiful the product that you can get. So this ceiling here, we chose to do 3 coats, and you don't have to worry at all about joint lines with the 3rd coat of spatulata. Each part is placed, and you're putting a lot of pressure on the trowel here, although it doesn't look like it. We're putting quite a bit of pressure, and then someone is coming behind and starting to burnish as that product is wet. Now each piece is almost dry. As you can see, the burnished part back there is already dry. So we're not worried about dry lines with this particular product. You're just working in small sections, and when you overlap, when I see that wet part is going on to the burnished part, you have to be very careful and put a lot of pressure, and don't allow any little buildup or a little ridge there, else you will get a joint. So you want to make sure that you're always pressing that product as far into even the burnished areas as you can, and then you're not going to see any joint lines whatsoever. So it's just pieced together, patch by patch, burnished and burnished again, and then you just put another patch and overlap onto the burnished part just a little bit, and you just take your time and slowly piece it together into a little patchwork of spatulata. I highly recommend having at least 2 people working with spatulata because it's much easier to have one person applying the product and one person coming behind and burnishing the product. Smaller areas you can do yourself, but even then it becomes quite mentally taxing having to clean your trowel every time, or have multiple trowels to keep track of applying, burnishing over and over again. So I highly recommend to always have 2 people working, and this will make your life much easier, and your product as well will be a much higher quality. It's easier if one person just has a task and all they have to do is burnish, and then one person's task is only to apply. There's a specific technique for burnishing. You can see Ramen here is holding the trowel in a specific way, and he's going kind of at a 45 along. Then the application, we put it on and then we take it off in a little half moon shape. If you do too large a swipes, you're going to see really large gregarious kind of movements in the ceiling, which I think are not as pleasing to the eye. So we spend more time and do a lot kind of more micro movements. Again, you can do almost anything with this product. You can apply it in lines and stripes and different, any type of trowel movement it will show. So whatever you decide to do. Here you can see the shine starting to come. We haven't waxed this yet. We haven't buffed it or polished it. That's just from the trowel, and that's just the natural shine of the pure calcium lime and the beautiful marble powder that we use. There's no acrylic base in this or anything like that. This is a pure lime-based product. There's a new technology that people are using as well. So in this ceiling, there's actually multiple speakers, and these speakers are actually part of the drywall, and then you have a thin amount of drywall compound placed over them, and they radiate a sound through the drywall compound. So here we had to be careful. We didn't know where the speakers were, but if you push too hard, you'd start to feel all of a sudden the speaker giving way in the ceiling. So we had to be extra careful to get a lot of shine and take our time and note where those speakers were. Sometimes these speaker companies only recommend an acrylic Venetian plaster over them. Some don't recommend traditional Venetian plaster, and many just haven't tested it. In our experience, we haven't had an issue putting thin veneer Venetian plasters over these speaker systems. So the plastering is all finished now, and we've moved on to the ceiling. So in order to achieve the matte finish here, and you can see how much mottling there is, and it looks very dark when it's wet, but all that mottling will come back. So that's our matte low sheen polyseal sealer that we use for micro cement, and it's diluted in a 1:1. You don't want to use it full strength on an absorbent surface, so that's diluted 1:1, rolled on. Then we do a second layer of polyseal undiluted, and then we end with our Eco Matte, extremely matte sealer as well that we applied. So there's actually 3 layers of sealer on there. The matte sealer doesn't, it's a polyurethane based single component. It does not adhere well to direct to absorbent surfaces. And really no polyurethane in the industry is recommended for direct application. Usually polyurethanes like to have a primer, and that's why we've chosen to use the polyseal here for this system. We use this particular system for fireplaces and hood ranges as well all the time. The roller sleeve we're using for the polyseal, generally I find a 10mm microfiber works well. The lint-free, you'll find kind of has a lot of the polyseal kind of dry on and into it a little bit, just with the way it applies to the wall as the plaster absorbs. The lint-free kind of gets glugged up a little bit. Now you're seeing how much the polyseal even brings out much more of the mottling there. Although it's shiny and we don't want that shine, ultimately the polyseal is bringing out so much of the color and is not a color enhancing product, but does just give that little bit, it just darkens the colors by I'd say 10 or 15%. You can see all that beautiful mottling. Now we've moved on to the ceiling again. The ceiling has dried from the previous day. I believe we gave it a couple days to dry. The longer you can allow it to dry and cure out, the better. I would recommend at minimum 1 day, if not 2 or 3, before you put the wax on if you have the time on a project. This is an oil-based wax here, a heritage wax. The oil-based I find to be much better in general than water-based. And the basis is beeswax and a little bit of carnauba wax as well. You can't apply that particular product so easily with a sponge for this, or if you do put a sponge, you're just going to add kind of too much product. So we actually use the animatrels, and again, we're spending a lot of time. This does cost a lot of money to produce, but as you'll see in the end, the effect is quite stunning. So we're hand applying the wax, and then we're using a rag and buffing any excess off, because this wax is extremely strong and very durable. And once it sets up, if there's too much on there, it'll be almost impossible to get off. So you want to trowel it on very thin and then rag off any of the excess. You'll find it pits and creates little pockets where there might be a little bit of unevenness. Just make sure you rub that out with the rag. Now you can see you have to wait at least maybe an hour, 2 hours for that oil-based wax to really kind of dry and crystallize, and you'll see when the areas turn from a dark color to a much lighter that the wax is now cured. Then we're using, as usual, our cut polishers, and we're in quite a high speed with them, probably 2200 RPM, something like that. We got brand new wool bonnets on there. And this is, you know, as I said, difficult, expensive work. It's all overhead. You have to hold those for, 6 hours and polish the ceiling. But it's very rewarding, and the effect that you get is just, you can't create anything like this in the world, I think, without a product like the Spatulata or similar products that other people make. The other beautiful thing about this, if you're not a DIY and you are an installer watching this video, I know there's a lot of issues with many of the products around the world for the spatulatas and the Grassellos, where when you apply them, they generally have issues with peeling and coming off, especially on the third coat. Our product, for whatever reason, I've never found that to be an issue whatsoever. I've never seen the product kind of peel or delaminate from itself during the burnish. So it is very easy and has a high level of workability. And you can produce this finish even as a DIY, I think, with our products if you watch the videos and do some practice for a while. We're also using extra fine steel wool. This will tighten up any areas that do have a little excess wax and are remaining dark. You have to be very careful with that steel wool, especially while there's wax on it, else you can wear through that finish. It'll be very delicate. This is many hours later in the day. We're continuing to polish. You can see now it's, I'm not sure what the word would be for how shiny that is, but it's that is real and unedited, and that's exactly what the ceiling looks like with just a natural product and the beautiful natural wax as well. And you can do 2 tones as well. If you want to have multiple tones, you can have 2 or 3 different Grassellos and put them on the third coat, or you can do a different color on the second coat, or different colors on all 3 layers. And then, as I'm sure you've seen on viral TikTok videos, you can do really fake marble as well, and you can vein it and do all different colors and create things that actually look just like real marble slabs as well. Again, like you see in every video, we've color matched the silicone to the blue. We've color matched the silicone for the nice kind of tan color here. We've demasked everything, checked everything, cleaned up, and then the last step is obviously to do all the silicone. If you leave these edges looking raw, then the builder and designer is going to wonder like who's expected to finish those areas. So just as an installer, always finish them yourself, and always leave the builder the excess silicone as well. So this is now finished, polished, all ready to go. You can see the beautiful shine. You can see all the trees and the water in the ceiling, and anyone that comes over to your house would be, I think, quite shocked to see what's in your living room there. There's a lot of depth with the Grassello products, especially the spatulata, because there's so many layers and colors that are pressed, and they create unlimited shades. And I know people that aren't familiar with these plasters, if they look at it, sometimes they'll think it's a foot thick or even textured because there's so many different colors and variations, but it's dead smooth. But when you look at it, it actually looks very textured in one sense. Now moving over here, the foil to that beautiful ceiling that's so shiny, now you have this ultra matte, almost clay-like stairwell, which is quite stunning. You have all the movement and all the modeling of the spatulata, but we've taken all of the shine off of it, and you can see there how beautiful it is, where you can see the matte and then the shining as well. With less shine, this product really produces nice earth tones and so many different shadings, and really is a great substitute to painting your home. And it doesn't take that long to do 2 coats of this everywhere and do the sealers, and you'll have a much more durable, vibrant finish that's very earthen feeling, and it has quite a lot of undulation to it as well. You can see there, it really makes the wall look like it's made of earthen materials. I hope this video has helped you, and I hope the tips and tricks will help you to succeed with your DIY and professional projects. We'll leave you with the last few final photos that we have, and I believe the designer has done a professional photo shoot, and we'll hopefully post those up soon. Thank you again.